Max, thank you so much for sitting down with me today, and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Can you tell me a little bit about you and your role here at Brandsmiths?
Of course. So, my name's Maxime, obviously. I am a sports and litigation associate at Brandsmiths. I sit within our litigation team where we do sort of more general litigation, so any type of dispute resolution. And that can be anything from like your standard breach of contract claim to a shareholder dispute. But one of the things that I really specialize in is sports disputes and specifically sports arbitration.
Okay. And how long have you been here at Brandsmiths?
3 years now.
Okay. And have you always been working in this type of law?
So I started here as a paralegal and then I did my training contract. So in that I did a bit more sort of general training. So that's from just your standard commercial work, so non-contentious stuff to IP litigation. And then I ultimately qualified into litigation. But I have quite a strong background in sports arbitration. So before I joined Brandsmiths, I also worked for a very small boutique sports litigation firm.
Yeah.
So that's where my specialty comes from.
And the litigation side is very much kind of dealing with disputes. And is there any sort of like from somebody who might be watching this who's thinking about what part of law to go into? Is there certain kind of skill sets or that differentiate between the different types of law, and what's the focus for your sector?
So, for what we do in litigation, obviously, it's effectively once a relationship breaks down. Whether you're in a business with someone and they have ultimately a dispute with the founder, for example, where we jump in is we come in when the relationship is ultimately broken down and we need to figure out what to do. It's basically damage control, and that's a question of sort of going into a strategy on whether you want to negotiate a deal or whether you think it's reached a point where you actually need to go to court and figure it out. So from my perspective, I find it very interesting when you go into litigation because you have to sort of deal with something that is um, highly urgent because obviously sort of tensions are running high and you need to figure out what to do next fairly quickly. But you also need to have a pretty robust strategy to figure out how this is going to impact your business moving forward. So you're not just looking at the dispute itself, but the impact around it. And I think that's what makes disputes very interesting.
Yeah. And what sort of clients do you have? Like, what's kind of the ideal client within your team that you're dealing with?
So we deal a lot with, and we've got a pretty broad client base. We deal with entrepreneurs to sort of your big multinational companies, but we very specifically focus more on like your founders, entrepreneurs, any sort of one that's building a brand.
Yeah.
That's where we really focus.
And if you were giving advice to anyone who kind of is thinking about, in a situation where they may need to navigate utilizing your services, what piece of advice would you give them?
So one of the things we really try to focus on at Brandsmiths is we want to work with you as whether you're an employee or whether you've founded a business and figure out that once if something has gone wrong, if a relationship is broken down, if a contract has been breached, we want to work with you specifically to find a resolution that's not just about the dispute, but that looks also at the business overall and how it will impact your brand or your reputation or your ability to sort of do business moving forward. So that's sort of what we like to focus on.
Amazing, thank you. And obviously, you're working with lots of different brands and companies. Is there any specific traits that you see in those founders and business owners that you think makes them so successful?
That's an excellent question. I mean, obviously, you look at sort of the individual drives, and one of the things that's so interesting about this is, of course, from a litigation perspective, you can really see that at the end of the day, why litigation is so sort of important. It's highly emotive because all these people have put sort of their entire sort of life savings and their whole passion and everything they have into building these companies,
Yeah.
and that's why sort of it can get very intense when things start breaking down. So I think it's exactly that. It's the drive and putting everything they have into building that brand and building that business.
Yeah, it's amazing. We've been asking lots of people today those questions, and similar things have come out. So I
Yeah.
think that it is that thing that kind of drives entrepreneurs and people who've kind of taken the risk.
Yeah.
It's a real passion project for them. Um, what's what's before you kind of came into this role,
Mhm.
did you what knowledge did you have of IP? And how important do you think it is for people who are thinking about setting up their own companies or have their own businesses? How important is protecting their IP and identity?
I think it's one of the most fundamental things you need to keep in mind when you're sort of starting a business and starting a brand. You want to make sure a lot of businesses, you'll see that a lot of the value comes from the intellectual property that they have and the brand that they're building. So you want to make sure that's protected. And it's one of those things, especially if you're sort of starting small, it might go overlooked because you're looking at sort of focusing on the day-to-day operations and getting things off the ground. But ultimately, you want to make sure that you're building value in the IP and in the brand that you actually are building. And while when you're starting out, you might overlook that at first, you want to make sure that down the line that's protected. And at the end of the day, if you sort of try and focus on it very early on, then you'll be able you're saving yourself some trouble.
Perfect, thank you. So I'm just going down. We're going to ask you some personal questions now, but nothing too much on here. Is there any kind of books or podcasts that you listen to regularly that kind of have helped to spur an interest in money or business?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I'm not really a podcast listener. Um, for me, one of the things that kind of got me into where I am now is my sporting background.
Okay.
So one of the reasons why, for example, I wanted to focus a bit more on sports litigation is because I've always been an athlete. So I've always found it interesting to look at sort of athletes, and particularly in my sport, I am an Olympic weightlifter.
Okay.
Seeing a sport, for example, where athletes don't have the funding that they would in, say, if you're a professional footballer,
Yeah.
and seeing how they then have to use their own brand to effectively fund themselves moving forward. So you can be an Olympic level weightlifter
Yeah.
and still have to work a job and figure out how to fund yourself by building your own brand through things like social media. So I really find it very inspiring listening to those types of stories.
Yeah. That's amazing. And how did you get into the weightlifting?
Kind of by accident. I just moved to London and was like, this actually, I need a new challenge. So I joined a weightlifting gym and I just fell in love with it ever since.
And you're competing still now, are you? Or
Every so often, not as much anymore, just because I'm getting a little bit older and work actually will takes priority. So I'm not able to train at the high level that I was, but I still enjoy enjoy competing uh,
yeah.
now and then.
Amazing, congratulations. It's really interesting, I think, what you said there about how there's so many sports where you're having to kind of juggle working and competing at a high level. How did you find that when you were doing it more regularly?
So I mean, at the time I was competing more regularly. I was still a student. So then it gives you a lot more flexibility. But obviously, I mean, one of the things that I've noticed myself with a job like this, you can't really go and train 4 or 5 hours a day,
Yeah.
which is what you need, and still be able to function at work or be able to recover the way that you do. So when you look at athletes that are going to world championships and that are going to the Olympics and then still trying to combine that with just going to work. It's incredible, and I'm very lucky that I get to train at a gym where I am surrounded by women who are competing at world championships, who've gone to the Olympics, and seeing them manage that so effectively. It's incredible to see.
Amazing, amazing. Who would be your dream dinner party guest, whether it's an athlete, celebrity, entrepreneur, dead or alive?
Oh, probably Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift. She would be a fascinating one.
Absolutely, yeah. She's I mean, she's an incredible businesswoman. So having a conversation with her, aside from the fact that I've been a Swiftie my entire life, would be incredible.
Did you manage to see her last summer
I did.
in London?
In Amsterdam twice. Yeah.